I'm Mark Seifter.
And I'm Linda Zayas Palmer.
And this is Arcane Mark. Hello and welcome to our Biased Reactions Part 3 of 3 for Lost Omens Legends. The only biased reaction so far that is so biased that it required 3 episodes to contain all of the bias.
Yes, we will be resuming our study of bias today with the Lick-Toed Goblins.
And what could you be more biased about than that? Well, I guess Cassie. But the Lick-Toed Goblins are definitely a set of goblins that, as Pathfinder 1st Edition players, and certainly as Pathfinder Society players who saw how many people were grinding through the Weeby Goblin scenarios because they took like 1.5 to 2 hours and then gave 3 times as much credit as a regular scenario, we really got to know these goblins a lot. And they are
things that inform sanctioning rules in 2nd edition Pathfinder Society.
They are they have so much personality, and they've gone on so many exploits over the years. And basically, the Lick-Toed Goblins ended their last adventure by just going on to the astral plane.
So we kind of talked around it a little bit here, but the saying adventures, but these are the stars of the Weeby Goblins Free RPG Day Adventures.
That's right.
And that whole series, Weeby Goblins 2, Weeby Goblins Free, Weeby 4 Goblins, and Weeby Super Goblins where the S is actually a 5.
Mm-hmm. And so there's a story about a recovery specialist from the astral plane who is kind of reading a book of fairy tales from Feylands, and then gets this dossier about the Lick-Toed Goblins that explains about them and then their known history, as well as talking about the city of Yolgamat, which is the one that, a famous city in the astral plane that has a big enough amount of, like, weird rock, even in the timeless astral plane that is a plane of pure mental thought, that is enough to sustain a constant population. And it's got a goblin song in there. You know there was going to have to be a goblin song.
Oh, yeah, totally.
If you, so Linda, will you sing the goblin song?
Okay, here we go.
You want to do it together?
Steal
the cake, crunch the bird and raucous meat, kill the ogre, smash his head. We be goblins, you be dead. We big chiefs and we be bored. Off to find our squealy Nord. Into Bagland, smash the place. Ride our dragon into space. This place boring, it's so drab. There be nothing fun to stab. We have new prize to acquire. We make raid on plane of fire. So that's the goblin song.
Yep.
Basically, it has the history then of the goblins, starting from the Weeby Goblins and going through the end of the last Weeby Goblins. And at that point, there are rumors about them that mentioned that they are trying to plot their raid on the plane of fire, potentially to steal, like, fire from the plane of fire.
I mean, what better place to get fire than the plane that is literally named after it?
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's called the Plane of Fire. It sounds like somewhere they would want to go.
Yeah, that is their companion pig dragon, Squealy Nord.
That's correct. It used to be a pig until now is a pig dragon.
If you want to learn more about what happened to Squealy Nord, play the Weeby Goblin series.
That's right. So what is our next bias thing to be biased about?
Magdalena and Martin follows.
So it says here farmers of the Bellflower Network, but what you have to understand about the Bellflower Network, which is kind of a halfling underground railroad that helps free halfling slaves, is that their titles are like tiller and things like that, and farmer is actually the highest title. So these are not just like two farmers that are in here, that means that they are in charge of the entire organization. As much as a chaotic organization has someone who is at the head of the organization.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically this includes the history of these two halflings and how they came to be together, and then also how they came to be the farmers of the Bellflower Network, as well as information on the Bellflower's current operations. Because if you just knew like how they came to be the farmers, now you know the history of the characters. But the Bellflower operations really let you use the Bellflower Network in a game and connect them to some of the other legends that are here in the book. So you could see that Magdalena is the tactical mastermind, and they're having some mixed success with the new nation of Ravenel.
What's going on in Ravenel there, as well as their forays into a place with a very long-standing history of oppression, Nidal.
That's right. Plus, also, the Whispering Tyrant is definitely an issue with the undead, because, I mean, it may not be traditional slavery if you just kill someone and turn them into an undead that servant, but it definitely is, like, also really bad. And they are just building up in all of these areas. So,
and as with these other sections, you have some handy equipment.
Mm-hmm.
That handy equipment that helps with escape, such as
I had it wrong. Yeah. Magdalena and Martem are twins. They're not a couple. I had misread it a long time ago when I was not paying close attention to it. Silly me, I forgot almost all characters in fantasy RPGs are singles so that PCs could romance them.
Yep.
No, but seriously, there are very few couples.
You have a Reed Mutagen to help you run faster.
Yep. It basically gives you longer stilt-like legs, which can be a problem for your AC, but certainly can make you fast and make you better at athletics. Plus honey scent, that can give weird hallucinations. It is a poison. And the Swamp Lily Quilt, where you just kind of put it on the ground and make a big difficult terrain on there, which is pretty cool as well. And speaking of quilts, I think that the art is really awesome of like the different quilts for the Bellflower Network make, and what the signals and symbols are that are indicating like, oh, if you see this in a quilt, then that means that there's safe passage over water, for example. And Altro points out that in Pathfinder, the characters are single and bi, and that's true, but that's also so your PC can romance them no matter what.
Yes.
There's also a list of Bellflower safe houses, so that, hey, wherever you are, as a GM, you can just quickly pull out the nearest safe house for your Bellflower character, and you have the code word for that safe house, too. So, it's pretty handy, this entry, if you want to do something with the Bellflower Network. Alright.
Next up, we have Nanko, Linnern King of Iceburn.
That's right. So, Nanko is pretty awesome, because Nanko is a Varki Linnern King. And basically, if I remember correctly, Mike Sayer said that, like, Nanko has a lot of his grandfather energy. By his, I mean Mike's grandfather energy, where his grandfather would just, like, go out into a place and then come back with this amazing story. And so he channeled some of those things into the character of Nanko. And you can really see that there's something about the character that feels real, even though obviously he is a badass who hunted down a giant dragon monster and became the king of a fantasy Linorm kingdom. But even so, there's a lot of cool information. It talks about.
I do like the one-eyed bear illustrated here too. Takamo, his companion.
I mean, come on, you gotta have a one-eyed bear too. And it talks about Donko's like opinions about the title Linorm King. And why it's a title that doesn't make sense because Linorms don't. You're not actually the king of Linorms. And it talks about like Nanko saw that there were problems that were going on between between a lot of Varki and a lot of Ulfen in the area, and then realized that there were misunderstandings that threatened the peace, and is really, really trying to bring together everyone with diplomacy, and White is like on friendly terms, or trying to get on even friendlier terms with White Estrid, with Thera Ash Eyes, the successor to King Sven Blood Eagle. And so basically, though, Nanko does have trouble with one of the other nearby Linorm kings, Ingemundr the Unruly, who has always kind of been, let's raid and attack everybody.
I mean, if you
let's
are
go back
the
to
unruly,
the old. Let's go back to the
title,
old ways. We've got to raid.
Then somebody with the unruly as part of their title is probably going to be trouble.
Mm-hmm. That's right. And basically, yeah, he still likes to go hunt, and he's got a one-eyed bear. So,
but of course, you might imagine the things that he finds to be interesting to hunt at his level of power are.
Yeah, they're not exactly the same thing that probably that Mike's grandfather actually hunted in the real world, because it's a fantasy world.
Yeah. Like Taiga Linorms, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And next up here we have the Wizard King Nex.
That's right. Wizard King Nex. So we already talked about Geb. So we have the other half of this team of rivals.
I don't think they'd want the word team to be associated with them.
Yes, but they mean so much to each other, Linda.
They do.
Geb committed ritual suicide after his funk when Nex disappeared. So Nex has disappeared, but has definitely done a lot of things over the millennia, because Geb and Nex have been here for a while. And Nex has sieged Absalom unsuccessfully, like, has a bunch of conjured creatures, has a Spire of Nex. Of course, the Nation of Nex is a well-documented thing that Nex was dealing with. What else does Nex like to be a rival with? How about Count Renalk, an eldest, one of the deities of the First World?
He certainly doesn't pick easy rivals. I guess easier rivals would be crushed by now.
He probably did pick other rivals and just killed them. And you just don't hear about those because they were... And even Count Renalk has like, kind of, like, gotten into a situation, although it may have been from the other eldest and not Nex, but who knows?
Yeah. And as we mentioned a bit when our talking about Geb, there's signs that of an ancient power stirring that may well be signs of that Nex's return is imminent.
I kind of like the quote from High King Anung Aranak of Dongan Hold, who was smack in the middle of Geb and Nex. If not for his war with Geb, Nex would likely be revered. No doubt he was a better man and better ruler than his rival. Ask my people how much that mattered.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, basically, Nex, but there's been these perilous stirrings and indications that make people think that something might be happening with Nex himself, not Nex the Nation. Although, Nex the Nation is involved with Nex himself. Spire of Nex is thrumming to an alien frequency. The Flesh Forges have been restive.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone is thinking, who knows about these things, including Geb, hey, is Nax on his way back? Is something gonna happen?
Yeah. There's a question in the chat. Did some of these NPCs start life as PCs in a long past home campaign by some of the Pathfinder designers?
No, but, I mean, actually, I guess, still no, not Pathfinder designers, but that was only technically true, as Luis indicated, because I was going to say Sapphire Butterfly was a PC from Luis's game, but he is a developer.
And there's certainly quite a few NPCs and deities who came over from James Jacobs' campaign.
Yes, that's correct. Or we're just James's PC, but I don't think we have done any legends yet that are James's PC. But there are a lot of characters in total that are, like Shensen and Ameko.
Yes.
So the answer was no, but only technically because you said designers. Although, like, there are, as we've seen, like, there are characters that have been created by designers, like, they're Mike's grandpa, although he wasn't a designer at the time that he wrote that entry, but it was not a PC. Alright.
Certainly a lot of these characters, draw inspiration from...
Yeah.
From a lot of different... These characters draw inspiration for a lot of different
Philip,
sources.
I wouldn't say Golarion got its start in James Jacobs' home campaign. I would say more so that when Golarion was being created, and keep in mind, we were not there. This was a while ago. A few of the people who are either not at Paizo or very high up at Paizo were there in the room and just throwing ideas into the mix. And some of those ideas that were thrown into the mix were from James Jacobs and were from his home campaign, where he's like, how about we put in this thing? It's from my home campaign.
Yeah, how about we put in, but it's Sandpoint.
How about we put in, that Sandpoint was named after Point Arena, which is his hometown. Or why don't we put in Tree Raiser? That's from, that was from, like, his middle school or early high school game or something like that. So, like, some of the things were from there, but there were also things that just some other person came up with. And it was all mashed together. So it winds up getting a lot of content that were from James's campaign, plus things that, like, Eric or Jason or others came up with.
And of course, as this setting continues to develop and evolve, more and more voices join. And we can never say, when freelancers write things, where they might be drawing their inspiration from when they add new content.
That's right.
So
a lot of people add content that are based on their campaigns in some way, like Luis was saying with Sapphire Butterfly or an original character. And the important thing is, like, once you do that in Golarion, it becomes part of Golarion. So now, like, at this point, and James Jacobs is an exception because he is also the creative director, right? But if he, like, stopped being the creative director, and then somebody went in a direction with Tree Raiser that was really different than his home campaign, like, that, it's now part of Golarion. It's different from the one that was originally in the home campaign. That's what happens when you have an original character or a PC who comes into the canon. Like, later, if someone says something about Sapphire Butterfly that's really different than it was in Luis's game, then that's an evolving character who's going to change to be different than the inspiration. Or my character, Cordelia, who is in Pathfinder Society Guide and the card game. Could have lots of new stuff about her that was not true in the original character. Alright, so let's see what we have next. Speaking of things that were created by Jason and not James in the initial campaign.
Razmir.
Razmir!
Yes.
Which may have been based off, that religion that likes to sue everyone. That may be a pyramid scheme. So Razmir is a wizard who is almost, but not quite powerful enough to figure out how to become immortal on his own, and is kind of claimed that he did and took the test of the Starstone, and is a living god who stayed here in the world. But is in fact not.
Yes. It's interesting to have a character who the most known thing about them is a secret that people in the world generally don't know.
Yep. The problem is, since he's not a god and he hasn't discovered immortality, he is in a situation where he's aging. So why there are things like his mysterious letter, Artokus Kiran. I won the bid for the elixir. You and I both know the truth of what happened. Know that the living god will remember. So basically, he set up this pyramid scheme situation where people worship him, and they are risen to these higher steps up, and they are basically raking in money from the lower steps to themselves, and eventually giving it to himself and to his nation of Razmir. But there's an issue with all this, which is that suddenly the Whispering Tyrant appeared really close by.
Mm-hmm. And despite all of his claims, he is not actually a god, and is not actually a match for the Whispering Tyrant.
No, he's not strong enough. So, basically, he had this place, he was carving it out of the River Kingdoms, he was killing off River Kingdoms people, trying to expand his theocracy of Razmir. But Tar-Baphon was obviously too powerful, and so he kind of was just like, we surrender to you, what do you need, Tar-Baphon? Because, what else are you gonna do?
Although as it says in this entry, for someone who is so egocentric that he would decide that he was going to make an entire nation worship him as a god, he still sometimes is thinking like, well, maybe I could take the Whispering Tyrant. I just need to find the right opening.
Luis says, all hail the living god! But yes, so he also, as we know, sent an assassination order, or request to the Red Mantis to kill Tar-Baphon, even after making a non-aggression pact, where the herald who was sent for the non-aggression came back as a wraith wearing a raspberry mask with the offer. It's like, yes, you can have the non-aggression pact. Send us at least 1,000 bodies per month. You probably have dead bodies you don't need.
Mm-hmm. The Whispering Tyrant says as he twirls his non-existent mustache.
Mm-hmm. It's also technically uncertain that the letter to the Red Mantis was sent by Razmir himself. It could have been an acolyte who overstepped, or an enemy who wanted to blame Razmir.
Yes.
No one knows!
And when no one knows, that means that any answer could be true in your campaign.
They all wear increasingly expensive masks. Also, if you look at the picture of the city, it's really important. You might have seen it when Jason was doing his stream where they went to Razmoran. But look at this city, just carefully, and you can see when you enter, if they want you to see only the good parts of it, you go through that tiny, narrow, golden corridor into the inner city, which is fantastic. But the outer city is like 90% of the city is horrible slums.
Yes.
That they have made, they just send you out in there, and it's not good. And so, but there's this one causeway, and it's got giant walls, so you can't see the slums when you're going through it. And there are walls around the city, so you can't see into it, except for the big, awesome parts that are sticking out from the center. So it's all about hiding and deception. If you look at the picture of the city, you can see it perfectly from that. Alright. So, let's see. How about Sapphire Butterfly?
Yeah, how about Sapphire
that is
Butterfly?
A character from Luis's home campaign, which is pretty awesome. Hell's Rebels campaign. So Sapphire Butterfly is a tiefling human bard named Vivienne Ashurka, who basically, if you even look at the backstory, it definitely looks like a Hell's Rebels PC to begin with, and has joined the Silver Ravens. You can even tell, had the idol Shensen background from Hell's Rebels.
And it's really interesting to include a character like this that makes it clear that, hey, instead of being, some abstract group that canonically play through the adventure path, that these were heroes, and they're heroes that you can see and think, hey, these heroes feel like PCs.
Mm-hmm. And it doesn't technically give all of the achievements of the adventure path to this character, so that people can still feel like their PCs were in there. Like,
Yeah.
It doesn't create a party who did everything. But it does, the entry is really does give you this sense of Sapphire Butterfly, and what happened in her backstory, and what is going on in the future with Sapphire Butterfly, like her cautious relationship with a lictor of the Order of the Scourge, which he is not quite aware of. Connections with the Bellflower Network.
And of course, the natural opposition to Queen Abigail II,
Well,
that comes in if your ultimate dream is to free Cheliax from the tyrannical rule of hell.
Mm-hmm. Plus, Shimali Manux, who is another one of the legends who's right after this. So we'll get into her soon. Complicated relationship with Tessa Fairwind. Doesn't everyone have one?
Yep.
Right? I mean, Avernaeus had the broken relationship with Tessa Fairwind. Because of the gulf between the Firebrands and the Free Captains in general.
Yeah, whether that whole sort of classic chaotic good versus chaotic neutral, are promoting freedom in the greater good, or is it more of just we're promoting our freedom and we're doing what we want?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And there's the declaration of the Sapphire Butterfly as an enemy of the state.
Yep. With a reward 10 times greater for a reward of up to 1,000 gold, which is an enormous amount for information that leads to the capture, and 10,000 if you capture.
Yeah.
10,000 gold
is a lot of money.
It is so much money. You could buy a level 16 magic item. Like, imagine if somehow you're, like, a second level, like, wine brewer or something like that, and Sapphire Butterfly gets drunk and passes out in your distillery for some reason, and you manage to get the guards in there and capture her. You'll probably actually be killed by the guards so they can take the money.
Yes.
But if you aren't, and somehow you get the reward, like, I don't even know what you're gonna do with that.
Well,
it's like a lottery winner. You're probably gonna, like, wind up getting messed up by how much money you now have.
But, I mean, it certainly shows how serious Abigail Thrune is about making sure that the Sapphire Butterfly gets captured.
No, absolutely. So, next up on our list of things to be biased about is Shimali Manux, who is the Admiral of Vidrian's Navy. So, we've already seen Avernaeus, who is, like, the spy master of Vidrian. Hello, Adam Generator. But we have not seen the Admiral of the Navy. Together, they represent a lot of the sort of power blocks that are keeping Vidrian going. So there's, like, excerpts here, and also it's mostly another one of the entries that has mainly encyclopedia entry on Shimali. It gives you, like, sort of the backstory of how she got started, and sort of talks about her growing legacy, honor among thieves with her and Tessa Fairwind, who keep running into each other. And even Shimali stole the Hurricane Queen's future flagship from one of Fairwind's lieutenants. Which, that's pretty funny. But yeah, basically, she has been doing her own kinds of piracy as the Admiral of Vidrian.
And, she's also very central member of the Firebrands as one of its co-founders.
Yep, that's right.
So while the Firebrands as an organization are more like or more sort of about less about like I am in charge, so I'll tell you what to do, and it's more about like I prove how awesome I am.
Mm-hmm.
Because the Firebrands, you earn a claim through your deeds.
They have connections to the Silver Ravens through Shensen. They have connections to Vidrian through Shimali. They have connections to a bunch of different organizations. Exactly, and Shimali is sort of the one who, from the Vidrian side, wanted to start it up. And there's like the back and forth. Avernus is the practical partner, and Shimali is the idealistic one, so they can have sort of different opinions about how to do things. Philip Ben says that's a lot of cannons on that ship.
It is.
Yeah, well, Vidrian having a lot of cannons does seem interesting. Maybe it's possible that Alkenstar has decided to team up with them in some way. I mean, how else are they going to get this many? Maybe they got them from the pirates who have been stealing them.
Maybe they did.
We'll have to find out. It's possible that there'll be more information on that later on. Kitsune Warlock says many could be fake. That's true too. You might want to intimidate people with fake cannons. It's a strategy that has been done. There must be an explanation for this. However, it's not in Lost Omens Legends.
Mm-hmm.
So, let's see what's next. Sihar.
Leader of the Bright Lions.
The Bright Lions are a rebel group in Mizali, which is the xenophobic nation where an evil mummy, child mummy god, rules, named Walkina, who wants to kill everyone, basically, other than the people in Mizali. And that includes other people, many of the other people who are in the Mwangi Expanse, basically because of the fact that they allow themselves to deal with other outsiders, so Walkina considers them to be, like, blood traders or something like that. And Sihar wants to bring back the old sun gods of Mizali, because for a while they worshiped these old sun gods, which are in the entry. But then, like, Walkina reemerged and was like, I'm Walkina, I'm here now, and took control of the place.
Yeah, and as Ultra points out, a lawful good leader of a rebellion.
That's correct.
You don't often see lawful associated with the leader of a rebellion, which creates certainly an interesting dynamic.
That's right. But when you're forced to grow up under the rule of a tyrannical mummy god, who might be executing people and have warped views of justice and punishment that are blasphemous corruptions of teachings, then even someone who's lawful might wind up being someone who had to, lead a rebellion. You don't have to be chaotic to lead a rebellion. So, basically, also, Sihar is trans.
Mm-hmm.
There's also more information about other members of the Bright Lions that are in here. Bright Lions' relationship with the people of Mizali. Sort of this idea of righteous heresy that Linda was talking about. Because they are heretics to Walkina.
But they're using a variety. They use a variety of methods. They have outright violent conflict, but Sihar is also spreading information about the old sun gods among the people and trying to win their minds and hearts away from the corrupt rule of Walkina.
The interesting thing about the old sun gods is that it had gone to a point where basically zero people worship them because of Walkina. But thanks to Sihar and the Bright Lions, they found old information about the old sun gods, and then restarted up the worship of these deities that had essentially gone defunct in their worship. And so that means that they're both old and really new. So it's a really, I think, an interesting opportunity for a PC or anyone to play someone who's worshiping these deities who are absolutely just directly in the entry in Lost Omens, Gods and that Lost Omens Legends, not Gods and Legends, but there are gods.
Lost Omens
Shohar, the sun god of noon, Luhar, the sun goddess of dusk, and Tlehar, the sun goddess of dawn. And like Luhar, the sun goddess of dusk, is the goddess of death and dreams and destiny, but she's lawful neutral. So another non-evil death deity is interesting. And Noon is justice, loyalty, and work, whereas Dawn is iron, love, and rebirth. So they kind of are a cycle of three. They're not necessarily a stereotypical one. And they have some interesting spells also that you might not always expect from a sun deity. Also,
and
I didn't.
says there's going to be more information on the old sun gods in the Milwaukee Expanse book.
Oh yeah, well that's definitely true. So, well, Luis said it, not me. So,
yeah?
There's more information about the old sun gods in the Milwaukee Expanse book. Kitsune Warlock says, can a gunslinger worship the justice god of high noon? You can.
Well, there you go.
Ultra wondering about the midnight sun. There isn't one. But the sun goddess of dawn has dreaming magic, which is kind of interesting. You might have thought it was on dusk, but it's actually dawn, because dawn is like, new day, potential. Give it to everything. Everything is, and dreaming potential is really, really appropriate for that. There's also just flat out a bright line archetype. Like most one-page archetypes, there's not much but that's in the archetype, but darn, if you need to pass yourself off as an actual worshiper of Walkina and be in Mizali, you want this dedication. It is very good at getting you to survive in Mizali. I can see why all the Bright Lions have this. Because you know enough about Walkina that you typically don't need to lie or impersonate to pass yourself off as a worshiper of Walkina. But if they're carefully inspecting you and like doing past phrases and like trying to catch you up, you still get a +4 on your checks against that. But like normally, if you're just walking past people, they'll think that you worship Walkina. That's the dedication. You can also get a bunch of cool, and by a bunch I mean 3 because it's a one-page archetype. What do you think? Cool things such as wreathing your weapon in flame, a little bit of fire and a little bit of good damage. Sure can be strong if the monsters are weak to one of those. And other ways to try to elude Walkina's ability to sense you. Kitsune Warlock says, to be the best lying lion, you need to be a bright lion blade. I don't know if that even makes sense as a character, but you definitely would be the most lying lion.
Yes.
Absolutely would be. Alright.
You could take that as a challenge, see if you can find out some way to make a character with that story work.
Maybe it was a spy from Taldor who was trying to infiltrate, basically infiltrate Mizali, and then met the Bright Lions. Is like, I really agree with this. And these gods who have been revealed to make sense. Maybe they were an expatriate from Mizali who escaped Walkina originally, who started a family in Taldor, then became a Taldan spy, and so they sent them to infiltrate.
Lions, we're called lions.
They sent them to infiltrate Mizali because Mizali's so xenophobic they would notice if it wasn't someone who was from Mizali, but they didn't realize they were the descendant of an expatriate. So they were a Lion Blade first, then they joined the Bright Lions. I don't know, everyone. Look, I'm trying. Alright, so next after that is Targic. The first High King of the Dwarves, known as the King of Sky. So, Targic is a mythical dwarven figure who was just like, let's complete the quest for Sky. Kind of united dwarven clans. Born in the Darklands, there was a Starstone. And they're like, hey, there's a Starstone. Let's go to the sky.
True poetry, that.
Yep. I mean, that's basically it. Fought a lot of orcs. Quested for a lot of sky. And basically... It talks about
the connections that he forged, as well as the foundation of the Sky Citadels. Yep. Many of which are still standing today.
That's right. But, like, the important thing is, this is a really long time ago that this happened. So, we're talking about a mythical figure who is ancient, and as far as we know from, like, this book, did exist, but is, like, the equivalent of if we're talking about, like, King Arthur, but way older than that, right? But King Arthur, if you're in Britain, if you're a dwarf, you would think, you might think about it that way. It's just like, this is the mythical figure who brought us together and did this amazing thing a long time ago. This is, like, you know, people are gonna surely name their children after Targic, and just, like, tell myths and stories about Targic, and I mean, it's even more in the past than stories about, like, Achilles are to us. Achilles just doesn't happen to be someone who has that sort of I was the high king over everything feel that King Arthur has. There could be maybe Solomon or David for Judaism are good examples of, like, this was this ridiculous king that that had their own sort of legends in their own time, was a very, very long time ago, and still talking about them. There's a bunch of examples in here
in the
chat, like Gilgamesh. If Sumeria still existed, that's the thing. But yes, or Gaius Octavian. Yeah, Solomon. I think Solomon works. Emperor Jimmu. Yeah, absolutely, Emperor Jimmu. So that is what makes Targic really interesting. Is that especially for these long-lived ancestries, we don't actually have a lot of, like, these messianic / like, super mythical figures in their history. Like, we don't know who that person is for the Uruksi, but now we have a lot of a sense of who that person is for the dwarves. Alright.
To speak of people who have been around for a very long time, but
Hello
have
there.
far more malevolent intentions.
It's Baffy.
It's Baffy! Are you trying to take over the world again, Baffy? Yes.
Yeah.
So this is a reference to a reference to, I don't know how John Compton and I started it, but we
the
just
bobblehead
had, like,
Baffy.
We imagined having, like, a bobblehead of Tarbafon that we nicknamed Baffy, and then it would be like, do you want to take over the world again? Yes. So
this is Baffy, or Tarbafon, the Whispering Tyrant, ancient evil, sealed in a can, all that jazz. Kind of a rival of Aridin, even before and after becoming a lich. Built, like, a giant Aridin trap at one point, like Wile E. Coyote to Aridin's Roadrunner. It didn't work. So yeah, the Lich Tarbafon is super dangerous. Created a philosophy called the Whispering Way based on his tome Whispers of the Immortal. Got sealed up.
Escaped
in Gallowspire. His prison, escaped Gallowspire because you know when the 10,000 year prison is gonna break.
It's gonna break. It's gonna break at some point. He's been pushed back for the moment.
Yes, but thanks to heroic sacrifice of PCs.
Yes.
They managed to significantly weaken him and destroy his attempt to take Absalom that otherwise would have succeeded. He's had to retreat back to everyone's favorite island, the Isle of Terror.
Yes. But you know, it's unclear. But of course, you know, he's been pushed back, but he's still got his plots.
Yep.
And he still got his plots, and he had thousands of years to think about what he would do. So you can be sure that he's got
new plans too,
and countermeasures.
Last time he was around, some of these juicy things that have happened, like in Adventure Pass or just since then, weren't there.
Yeah.
Like, there weren't these final blades of Galt that are holding, like, thousands upon thousands of souls that are in there. And we know from an adventure where one of them was shattered that if you break it, like, all these wraiths and things come out of it, right?
Yeah.
Imagine what would happen if Tarbafon broke all of those things at the same time, because he's imagining that.
Yeah. He's imagining a lot of things.
Yep. He is imagining a lot of things.
He still wants to, and as it says here, he still wants to he still wants to conquer Absalom and get the Starstone and take over the world.
Time to take over the world.
Yes, the Starstone with his face's reflection in it. It would not be good for Golarion if that situation came to pass. That is for sure.
All right. So speaking of people who are not Tar-Baphon, Talandia Adasaril.
Yes.
She's the queen of the elves of Kyonin. So
we mentioned her last name at the very least.
That's because of Zin Adasaril.
Yes.
That's right. So much like pretty much all the characters in Golarion, Talandia is single, but because so many of the characters were single, there's new content where she is now she now has a fiance who is an Alijae elf named Zazarel. Yes, some of these people got some fiancés, so they wouldn't literally all be single.
Yeah. So
except Irabeth.
That's true. So Queen Talandia definitely, as an elf, is someone who she's been ruling for a long time, and she is someone who has a very broad perspective on a lot of what's going on politically. And while Kynan's generally stayed out of some of these shorter term squabbles that have been happening among various nations, certainly the return of Tar-Baphon is something that nobody can stay out of, and it's been something that has incentivized her, and then by extension Kyonin, to become more involved in the affairs of other nations.
That's true. Plus, her friend, the bird Nyrinin, is that bird that's there. Problem is, of course, that she's trying to build a network of allies because Tree Raiser, as we mentioned from James Jacobs' home campaign, is an evil demon lord who has turned her forested area into a swamp called Tanglebriar that's part of her nation now, and it's horrible, and it has demons, and it's bad. And so she's trying to build up some allies so that they could stomp it out once and for all.
Mm-hmm. And the side right here talks about the fact that, that she has eyes everywhere. She's a master of illusions. You might be talking to someone who is actually her, or
she
someone
can scry on her subjects.
Scry on her subjects a lot. She has sort of a standing thing with a lot of her subjects. It's like, yeah, sure, she can scry on them whenever she wants. So, eyes could be anywhere.
She's trying diplomacy. She wants you to know that she's friendly and diplomatic. She's not this, like those aloof Tolkien elves who are like, we won't talk to you.
Mm-hmm.
She's talking to Andoran with Andira Marasek. She's talking to the dwarves of the High King's Mountains. She's talking to Eutropia in Taldor. And,
there's certainly conflict with Razmaran.
No, yeah. She's not gonna talk to Razmir. Yeah, no. Also, Galt is a little bit of an issue, but she does know Camilla Dranok, who escaped to Kyonin as a child, and she was like, someday this girl is going to either rule a nation or destroy one. Yeah, probably.
Yeah. And if she can get them to stop with the whole Eternal Revolution thing, then maybe we can talk with Galt.
So let's look at Tessa Fairwind. She's been mentioned multiple times. Up until this point.
Hurricane
Queen of the Shackles, Tessa Fairwind. So, yeah, she's the ruler of the pirates and Scourge of Cheliax.
So she certainly came out on top of the many many conflicts that were brewing in the Shackles and the Skull and Shackles adventure path.
That's true. She fulfills a role that may be fulfilled by the PCs in the adventure path, but with Tessa as a friendly person who's helping them towards it either way, of kind of doing the sort of rising action and conclusory stuff in the adventure path. So, taking care of the issues with Cheliax, dealing with...
certainly in contrast to her predecessor, her predecessor, the previous Hurricane King of the Shackles, who was more kind of just let things be. She's a lot more active in her role.
Yep. And she wound up getting the title just because she was dealing with Cheliax from the adventure path, and the previous Hurricane King was not. She wasn't really gunning for it the whole time. So there's a lot of information about her. She's loyal to her allies, but, like, she has a history with a lot of these people.
Yes.
Like Shimali and their rivalry, and Avernus, who, there's now a reward for capture of Avernus, because Avernus may have betrayed her.
And she has, and of course the tempestuous relationship with the Firebrands, particularly the Sapphire
because she
Butterfly.
Secretly has assisted them, even though in public she's against them,
like,
because of the fact that they definitely go after some of the pirates that are under Tessa's purview, but that Tessa herself, while she's neutral, she's sort of, like, leans against the really, really worst of her pirates in a way that she can't publicly because she's the Hurricane Queen. So, there's a lot of drama, as you might expect, and, of course, a lot of piracy.
Yeah, but of course.
Alright, so what about Thera?
Thera Ashais, back to the Linorm King.
Yes, we get a story about Sven Bloodeagle, who was the Linorm King of Karlsgard, which is the biggest and most important city in the land of the Linorm Kings, and so therefore has to have, in general, is like considered the highest prestige Linorm King. And he just got old enough that he was going to go to Valenhall, which is the place that they go to retire out in Arcadia. And the fact that his daughter is his replacement is not the way the Linorm Kings usually do things, as we've said with the other Linorm Kings. The Linorm Kings it goes to anyone who beats a Linorm. Usually, that's almost never the child of the previous Linorm King. But this time,
well, I mean, as you can see the head of a Linorm on the facing page here.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Thera certainly earned her post.
That's right. Thera has earned her post. And yeah, when she did the challenge, she was assisted by Nanku, and that's probably part of, like, her relationship with Nanko. She's definitely focused her diplomacy on White Estrid, who some of the other Linorm Kings have had issues with. And she's, she does things different than her father.
And so, yeah, there's stories here that talk specifically about her battle and her stories and how she was underestimated and what she is up to now.
Yep.
That she's back and newly in charge.
Mm-hmm. And the fact that her siblings have squabbled for power as well was they kind of all wanted to do things. They're like, you're cheating, because she, like, kind of a magus. It's like, you're a witch. Her eldest brother was kind of the angriest, but eventually she became the king. So that's pretty cool as well. Shall we move on?
Yes.
Talon Vidocq. He has been mentioned before as well, as being the lictor of the Order of the Scourge, who has figured out some of the things Abigail Thune has done that are a little bit concerning, perhaps.
And you can see here on this facing page here the the web of string and faces with Abigail Thrune right in the center as the lictor, as a representation of the lictor puzzling out the web of connections and plots.
Because the Order of the Scourge are the Order who try to figure out like political corruption and these complicated intrigues. So yeah, absolutely. He's continuing his investigation. And he was once in the Dotari, who are kind of like the town guard, but
his
he left that to the
yeah,
Order of the Scourge.
Before he could finish his investigations, he had his investigations shut down.
Yep, by the Dotari, and he's like, I know who will not shut me down.
The Order of the Scourge.
The Order of the Scourge, they'll never shut me down.
Yes.
So he managed to join. He made it through the that really difficult. What do you call them? The scourging thing that you have to get
the trials that they have to go through.
Hell Knight trials, defeated a devil, rose from rank and file Hell Knight in less than a decade to the lictor who is in charge of the Order of the Scourge. And that's partially due to a massive number of successes, such as capturing the Bellflower Network's previous farmer. Not all of them were from him, but Vidoc himself captured the previous farmer. That's pretty major. There were murders in Westcrown.
Yeah, they're also taking some interest in the disappearance of Absalom's Primarch, Lord Gix.
Mm-hmm. A ring of necromantically influenced organ harvesters and kidnappers. There's a lot of things that are going on here. Also, one thing that helped Vidoc and Cheliax, where people are always trying to get their own reputation, is just like he wouldn't necessarily claim credit for his successes because he just was so obsessed with work of rooting out corruption.
Mm-hmm.
So he would just be like, "Oh yeah, the local town guard solved it." Right? It'd be like in the TV shows when the FBI comes in, and except if they were like, "Oh no, the local detectives solved it," or whatever.
Yeah.
And so this made a lot of the ambitious officers who wanted to get successes really want to keep him around and help him do things because they were getting credit for it. And in some cases, they know that they owe their positions to him, and it causes him to actually have more friends than you would expect from someone who's rooting out corruption. You would think that that's like gonna have like the reputation,
but they know that like if
the internal affairs reputation.
It's
of
like if they start doing things that are very corrupt or that go against what he would want, then he would have the evidence to expose them for frauds and have them stripped of position.
Yep. So it's put him into a stronger position later on. And
of course, his investigation has, as Mark mentioned before, has caused him to start peeking into some of the machinations of Abigail Thrune. So there's that game going on as well.
That's right.
And next up we have Ulthun, Watcher Lord in Exile.
It's Ulthun. So, Ulthun is the Watcher Lord of Last Wall. Pretty much, like, many of the Knights of Last Wall were killed, as we mentioned, with Caliban and Clarith. But Ulthun survived and is kind of hanging out in Absalom, trying to build up support for the Last Wall refugees and for taking care of Tar-Baphon in the taking care way where you don't give him nice treatment. And he also wanted to make sure that all of the goblin retainers that he brought along who saved the day were treated right. That which happened in... you learn more about that than how the goblin retainers helped out in, like, We Be Heroes. This is another different free RPG Day adventure that's not about the goblins that we started out by talking about. But basically how goblins realized that the undead are pretty bad. Also, I like the propaganda poster there. It just looks like an old-timey propaganda poster.
Oh, yeah, totally.
You've got the hand of the Whispering Tyrant and then like the little Ulthun. It makes people think, oh yeah, maybe we should help him.
Yeah. So he's So he's definitely working to try to recruit people to the cause after having lost many of those who followed him in battle.
Yep. That's right.
And so this talks about the some of the dynamics that he's facing and what he's up to.
Yep. And like his relationship with Winsel Starborn, who is the acting Primarch of Absalom, who Ulthen is hoping Winsel will remain acting Primarch in order to continue to support the Lastfall Knights, whereas Winsel's like, Ulthen would be a good candidate to be the Primarch. And so they have like an interesting situation with that. And then there's also
no you rule.
There's also Ulthen's plans to move forward alongside like working together with Caliban and the others for the most part. Like maybe to a lesser extent with Clarith and her sort of we're gonna go off there and attack people that are a little bit more chaotic. So yeah, he's basically staying in Absalom to be the face of the diaspora of Last Wall and to make people remember these were real people. This isn't just a story about bad things, because sometimes people say one death is a tragedy and like a million deaths is a statistic. So Ulthen wants people to remember it's not just a statistic. That is a tragedy, and it's a threat, and it's something that could happen to anyone. Alright, so let's see White Estrid. We've been just talking about White Estrid.
White Estrid and her Linorm friend here.
Yes. So every other Linorm king killed their Linorm. But it technically says that to become a Linorm king, you must defeat the Linorm.
Yes.
And White Estrid defeated the Linorm Foil Tongue by basically battling the Linorm and accepting the Beast Parlay to be bound to service. So she just came back with the Linorm. And, yeah, there is that. And also a really powerful weapon that she won't talk about other than saying it was a gift from Earth Spirits. She definitely has detractors for the fact that she did not kill the Linorm, and that like Linorms are usually super evil. But you know, she's managed to rule for longer than almost any Linorm king because she also has a Linorm.
Yes, and you know what? And that is another thing that certainly helps with the security of her regions, that she has a Linorm.
Yep. She certainly does.
Yeah, so she has you know, quite the number of political intrigues to handle. But she has also been able to amass a growing number of allies in recent years, such as the connection between her and Thera Asheyes.
But she hasn't been able to fully form a connection with Nanko yet.
Yes.
But Thera Asheyes definitely has been someone who did not have the same stigma towards White Estrid as some of the other Linorm kings did. Although they've not met directly because they've been, I think, corresponding via letters.
Yeah.
But there's a plan to renew the treaty. But she's also definitely careful about the fact that Thera killed the same type of Linorm as Boiltongue.
Yes. And of course, there are certainly external threats to worry about too, like Runelord Bellamarius with all of her envious scheming.
Yes, she's close by on the borders. She defeated Opir Eight Fingers, another kind of crappy Linorm king, and is now kind of poised to be gazing towards the Ironbound Isles, which is where Estrid is located. So she's definitely a threat. And knowing that, Astrid has kind of reached out to some of the Pathfinders in the nearby Ice Fairy Lodge, but nobody knows exactly what she's going for with that. Also, speaking of Winsol Starborn,
here's Winsol Starborn.
acting Primarch Winsol Starborn. There's a letter that it starts off with from Winsol that is to Chun Ye-sung, the captain of the First Guard and commander militant of Absalom, that talks about sort of the situation and talks about Watcher King Alton and what's going on in Absalom.
Talks about his views. Talks about how. Talks about his thoughts on some political situations, on the general momentum toward abolition of slavery that's been picking up, particularly in light of the manumission of the enslaved people who lived in Absalom.
Yep. And another fun one for us, since, you know, we've been biasly reacting, so we know what's really going on, is the letter where it's like, oh, friendly packbroker Hashim Ibn Said has warned me of a horrible gnome slaver named Shimon J, who is running one step ahead of the law and is trying to do slavery in Absalom now, and maybe you should capture her and return her to Katapesh to face judgment. Which we know from the Hashim Ibn Said entry that Shimon J is a null abolitionist who figured out the secret of Hashim Ibn Said being a veiled master. But of course, that's not the way that Hashim Ibn Said is going to spin it. And then more information about Averneus of Vidrian, Spire of Nex, and Lictor Tulun Vidok.
Yes.
So really, by being the acting Primarch of Absalom, he's connected to like a bunch of these different people just by dint of Absalom being a really important city to everyone. All right, let's move on to Zerbistes II, Hebizad Vraj, and Dina al-Parashat. So this is 3 in 1, because it is Satrap Zerbistes of Qadira, the warmongering satrap, plus his long-suffering Grand Vizier, who in a reversal, Zerbistes is neutral and wants to create a war. He wants it more than the empire that he's a satrap of, who do not want him to create a war. So they sent him a not quite loyal Grand Vizier. By not quite loyal, I mean neutral good and does not want a war, who came from the main empire. And
see the vizier who is secretly
scheming to be less warmongering.
Yes.
And then
nice inversion of the trope there.
Zerbistes gets to be
the viziers and the chancellors and all of them are always
one of the other millions or billions on Galarian of bachelors and bachelorettes who, but in this case is one of the few who gets a new fiance in Lost Omens Legends in Dina al-Parashat. So you've got Zerbistes, super warmonger, just really, really wants to invade Taldor a lot. You've got Hebizad Vraj with a letter to Princess Eutropia.
Just like,
you know, I really want to apologize on behalf of the Emperor for that recent unpleasantness involving these assassins.
Well,
the Qadiran coins are a transparent attempt by outsiders to reignite conflict. Oh, crap.
But
and it's like, oh, crap, Zerbistes, stop sending assassins at her.
Speaking of Qadiran coin, what about trade agreements?
Yes,
won't you
right? Trade? I hope you can guide them through the Senate. So he really just like wants peace with Taldor and generally is a neutral good Serenite, and he just has to deal with all of these people. And like he wants better medicine in Qadira. He'd love to have Cassie Zero give a speech there, except for that her atheism was just too much for the very, very Serenite people who were at the Venicon College. And he's a very long-suffering fellow. Uh, and then there's a little sidebar about the Peerless, who are hand-selected by Zerbistes II. Like, they're, like, super powerful heroes who are also high-ranking in Qadira. And heroes, because they're not all good. In fact, only one of them is. But they're heroes of the nation.
None of them's evil.
Yeah.
They're heroes of the nation.
Yep. And then, lastly, is Dina, who writes a letter about arriving here, and she is majorly abolitionist, in contrast to Qadira as a whole, which Qadira has kind of a different form of slavery, but still absolutely, definitely slavery, that is more economic slavery. Hi, Night Trace. And Dina is not having any of that. She wants it gone. And so she was, she didn't know much about the satrap who she was moving to come be the fiance of, but he is, like, not being as anti towards the obviously secret abolitionist things that she's doing as she initially expected.
And the Vizier, the Vizier is certainly on board with a lot of her sensibilities. I mean, the Vizier doesn't know that she's actively seeking to make contacts in the Bellflower network.
Yeah.
But
whatevs.
And then we have genie touched companion rules here.
Mm-hmm.
You can see Dina riding a genie touched horse on this page right here.
Why not ride a genie touched horse? I mean, would you ride a genie touched horse?
I mean, sure. That would be pretty cool.
Yep.
Well, I mean, water would make sense. Like, fire would be pretty dangerous.
I mean, yeah, I think they would be pretty dangerous if they were on fire. But, I mean, at least the horse would have resistance to fire. If you were on fire, maybe you would want to ride. Maybe if you were the goblins, then you would be afraid of it because it was a horse.
But it was also a horse that's on fire. Maybe that just makes it even scarier horse because it's got the power of fire.
Yep. So that's the last entry, but now we come to one of the best parts.
Entwined
Destinies! So this has, we have our own version of Tilun Vidoc's conspiracy boards that talk about all the combinations. So first there is the biggest of all of them, the Alliance Against Tar-Baphon. So you can see here that Tar-Baphon is there being a jerk. And he has his own thing with Razmir that is like maybe a detente. But Razmir is trying to hire Jacqueline to assassinate Tar-Baphon, perhaps. Ardax the White Hair, as an orc, has still teamed up with General Cersei and got Sorshan on board. And just some of all of his neighbors is just like, no, we're going to fight Tar-Baphon from kind of the west. Then from the south, we've got Ulthun in Absalom, trying to get Winslow, Starborn, and the others to support. Caliban and Clarith are doing their own thing. Also, there's a connection with Kismar Crookchar, who is supporting the Crimson Reclaimers with drugs, I think, or something. Then Talendia Adasarel also does not like Tar-Baphon and is making alliances with Camilla Dranak, Andira, and Eutropia. So it's just this giant thing. Then there is the ancient wrong of the dwarves in the quest for Sky, and the orcs, where you've got Targic, and he is the dwarf king who made the quest for Sky. You've got Anung Aranak, who is actually making
some secret
overtures to Ardax, the white hair. But there's heavy political pressure from a trade deal with Hashim ibn Said. Alright, so the next one that is also almost as complicated as the war with Tar-Baphon is the fight for abolition. So here in the fight for abolition, you've got Andira Marisak of Andoran, who is they've always been freedom, who is allies with Magdalena and Martem, the farmers of the Bellflower network. But of course, and is also allied with Shamali Manax and Avernaeus of Vidrian, and Winslow Starborn of Absalom abolished slavery. Meanwhile, Dina Alparashat wants to team up, and Zerbistes II is at least, maybe backing her. However, Tulin Vidoc took down the previous farmer before Magdalena and Martum. Abigail through the second wants all of these bellflowers gone. Hashim ibn Said, of course, is in Katapesh, which still has slavery, and this became more prominent for slavery when Absalom, which was the other big trading city, said no slavery. And meanwhile, Tarbafan displaced a ton of refugees, and which most nations were like, we can't take all these refugees. And Abigail's like, oh, you can come to Cheliax. I'm enslaving you.
Yep.
So, yes, there's a lot going on with that. There's some more that are a little bit less complicated, such as the hunt for the Primarch of Absalom, where you've got Winsel Starborn, who is the acting Primarch, and Ulthan II is there.
And as we mentioned,
Winsel wants Ulthan to take over, and Ulthan wants Winsel to stay at it. And Tulun Vidoc of the Hell Knights has been fed incorrect evidence that Winsel was the one who disposed of the original Primarch to take over, and meanwhile Tarbafan is attacking, and it's not a good situation. There's another one, which is Cassie. Hey, Cassia Zero, the mother of medicine. So, she was a student of Artokas Karan, among others, when she went around to learn from, everyone that she could. Learning about non-magical medicine. Hashim ibn Said helped her out a lot with a ingredient for her longevity medicine. She's attracted attention from High King Anang Aranak because they lie in a magic dead zone. So, hey, that's a good reason to be able to
have non-magical
healing. Grand Vizier Habizad Vraj wants her to give this speech, but also, she's very atheist. And, of course, Abigail Thune tried to hire the Red Mantis to kill Cassie, but they have voided the contract because Cassie saved someone who was almost dead, and the assassin botched it. Meanwhile, the war in the north! Haha! And by the war in the north, we mean, of course, the Wrath of the Righteous aftermath with demons. Because now that Queen Galfrey is like, bye, gonna be a herald, Chancellor Irahai is left in charge of the remaining Mendevians who are going to help the Sarkorians try to reclaim the Sarkor Scar. Legendary hero Irbeth Deerblade is coming back into it after trying to retire. There's some volunteers, Jonatimo, sent from the Megambia that are also going to help. And they even got a sword from Kevath Kol.
What does that sword mean?
Nobody even knows what it does because it keeps changing what it does. But also Kizmar Krukchar is illicitly sending agents to plunder the treasure of Korl the Conqueror that has been washing mysteriously up on Mendev's shores, which is causing all sorts of situations there. And that is our last conspiracy board. But don't forget
the gloss decks.
The gloss decks.
Always very useful.
And
if there's
of
any
course,
folks that you, if there's any terms you want to look up and learn more
also heroes get remembered, but legends never die is the last thing at the end. Also, of course, we have the OGL, which, as always, includes marriage.
Yes. The OGL
because of the water horses.
Yes, of course.
It didn't include marriage for everything on purpose. It just always included them.
And there we have it. That was the first secret message in the credits. Very cool.
There we go. In the credits of Lost Omens Legend, I imagine, because the APs have had it for a while. So now we know not to look for one when we go back in time to Gods and Magic.
The Lost Omens line. Good to know. Okay.
So,
well, that
there
was
we go.
our totally biased review of the last third of Lost Omens Legend.
We were even more biased about that third than usual.
Yeah. So, shall we say goodbye to YouTube?
Bye, YouTube. See you next time.
Bye.